I stood there, holding the champagne glass I paid for, watching my mom announce my sister's engagement at my graduation party. That's when I walked up, took the mic, and told the truth no one wanted to hear. Hi, I'm Emily. And for most of my life, I was the background kid, overshadowed, overlooked. But that night, I finally stopped staying quiet. Ever been the one who gave and gave, only to be erased? Let me tell you what happened next, and why I don't regret a single word I said. Have you ever had to speak up when no one else would? I'd love to hear your story in the comments. They say families like ours are built on love and traditions. From the sidewalk, our house looked like it had both in abundance. A white fence curved gently along the edge of the lawn, where neat rows of lavender bloomed each spring. There was always something baking in the oven, and wind chimes sang on the porch. We looked complete, but inside the air was different, quieter in the ways that hurt. I was 8 the year Clara was born, old enough to notice changes but not old enough to understand them. Before she arrived, I used to sit on the porch swing beside Mom, coloring pages in my workbook while she flipped through books on parenting. She liked schedules, soft colors, and words like potential and milestone. I liked the way sunlight made the floorboards glow under my feet. That spring, I drew her a birthday card. It was covered in daffodils with a poem I copied from the library's bulletin board. I waited for her to finish loading the dishwasher, clutching it like it was a treasure map. She smiled at first. "Oh, Emily, that's—" Then Clara let out her first real giggle from the bassinet nearby. Mom's head turned, eyes wide. "Richard, did you hear that? She laughed." My card was still in her hand, but already forgotten. She walked over, scooped Clara up, and began cooing. I stood still, the card slowly lowering in my grip. Dad peeked around the corner, nodded approvingly, and said something about early vocal patterns. That night, I tucked the card into the back of my closet. I didn't hate Clara. How could I? She was just a baby, all soft cheeks and sleepy sounds. But I began to learn that presence and attention weren't the same. I could be in the room, smiling, hoping, waiting, and still feel like the second voice in a conversation that never quite included me. One morning in late April, Mom called me into the hallway. "I need you to help me move some of your things," she said, already halfway through opening my dresser drawers. "Why?" I asked. She didn't look up. "We're moving Clara into your room. It gets more natural light. The sun helps with infant development." "But I like my room," I said, softer than I intended. Mom paused, then replied without meeting my eyes. "Clara needs it more." That afternoon, I watched as my yellow curtains were pulled down, replaced with soft gray ones. My posters were rolled up, my name tag peeled from the door. The new room I was given was smaller, tucked beside the laundry closet. It smelled faintly of detergent and had a window that faced the neighbor's fence. I didn't cry, not in front of them. I just sat on the edge of my new bed and stared at the wall. In some ways, it wasn't about the room. It was the feeling that I could be moved around, reassigned, like a coat on a hook someone no longer wore. A few days later, Grandma Margaret came by. She always brought lemon muffins and a bag that smelled of old library books and lilac perfume. She noticed I was quieter than usual. While Mom and Dad were busy giving her the latest updates on Clara's sleep patterns, Grandma slipped into my new room. She sat beside me and took a small cloth-bound notebook out of her purse. "For your thoughts, darling," she said, placing it in my hands. "They matter, even when no one says so." The notebook was pale blue with soft pages that made no sound when I turned them. I wrote my name in the front and drew a tiny flower beside it. That evening, after dinner, I sat in the porch swing by myself. The lavender bushes stretched along the fence, tall and full. I held my latest drawing, another card, this time without a name, and looked at the blooms. I knelt and slipped the paper beneath one of the thicker bushes, tucking it carefully where it wouldn't blow away. Maybe a neighbor would find it. Maybe no one would, but at least I had given it to something that wouldn't forget it in a second. The sky was pink and orange as the sun dipped low behind the trees. From inside, I could hear Clara fussing and Mom's voice humming a tune I didn't recognize. That was the first time I realized love in my house came in filtered beams, selective, soft, and always out of reach. I didn't become invisible overnight. It happened gradually, like when your favorite song fades into static on the radio and you don't notice until silence takes over. By the time I was in high school, I had become fluent in quiet. I knew how to be early without being seen, how to get straight A's without ever being celebrated, how to blend in just enough to avoid both praise and trouble. At home, Clara was the star. She was 9 when she got into that downtown dance academy with the glossy brochure and the strict ponytail rules. Mom called it an investment. Every Saturday morning, Clara was in her red leotard, hair slicked back, hopping into the SUV with her duffel bag full of sequins and ambition. I stayed behind, washing dishes or finishing extra credit assignments. I spent most of my afternoons in the school library or at a tiny coffee shop a few blocks from our house. The owner, a woman named Gina, never asked why I stayed for hours with 1 cup of tea. She just smiled and refilled the hot water when it ran cold. I liked the corner seat by the window, where I could sketch or write in Grandma's notebook without anyone watching. One fall, I entered the state art competition. I worked on my painting for 3 weeks, layering colors late into the night, sneaking extra time in Mr. Doyle's art room during lunch. When the results came out, I placed second, out of more than 100 entries. I rushed home, heart racing. For once I thought maybe this would matter. Mom was folding Clara's new costumes on the couch. "I got second place," I said, holding up the certificate, "statewide." She glanced up. "That's nice, sweetie. Oh, Clara just performed her first solo last night. They gave her a standing ovation. I wish you could have seen it." She went back to folding. That night, I didn't cry. I wrote. 4 pages in my notebook, trying to explain to myself why silence hurt more when it came from someone you wanted so badly to hear you. Senior year came faster than I expected. I kept my head down, worked hard. I was in the top 5 of my class, editor of the school newsletter, and I tutored 2 younger students after school. I never asked for anything. Not rides, not new clothes, not attention. When college applications opened, I applied to schools I could afford. I wasn't bold enough to dream big. University of Oregon felt safe. I got in with a partial scholarship. Grandma was the first person I called. She cried when I told her. "Keep going, Em," she said. "Your silence has weight, but your voice, when you use it, it'll carry." One evening, we had a family dinner, rare enough that Mom insisted we use the nice plates. Clara was beaming, freshly back from a music recital. She played piano now, too. Apparently, it helped with discipline. Halfway through the meal, between lasagna bites and small talk, I said it. "I got into U of O business program, partial scholarship. I think I can cover the rest with aid." I said it quickly, like if I spoke too slowly, it might fall apart. Dad nodded. "That's good." Before I could finish, Mom jumped in. Clara was selected for an intensive music camp this summer. Private instructors, exposure to National Scouts. It's going to really open doors. Everyone turned to her. No one looked at me. The rest of dinner felt like static again. That night, back in my room, the one that still had chipped paint and a desk too small for my textbooks, I turned on my string lights. I sat cross-legged, opened my notebook, and let the words come. I'm more than the contrast to someone else's brightness. I underlined it twice. Maybe I wouldn't shine on a stage or in a recital hall. Maybe my light wasn't for show, but it was mine. That was the night I stopped waiting for applause. I started building my own stage, plank by quiet plank. It was supposed to be a celebration of me. After 4 years of pushing through early mornings, group projects no one cared about, part-time jobs that left my feet sore, and grades that never got pinned on the fridge, this night was meant to mark something real, a milestone I had earned. When Mom offered to help plan the graduation party, I hesitated. She said all the right things. "You've worked so hard, honey. Let's make it classy. You deserve a real moment." I wanted to believe her. "We'll keep it elegant," she said. "White table linens, fairy lights, soft music, just family and a few close friends. Classy, unforgettable." I should have known who it would be unforgettable for. I arrived right at 6, wearing a navy blue dress I'd bought on sale after finals. Simple, clean lines. I had even curled my hair and applied makeup that didn't look like a freshman experiment. When I stepped through the front gate, the smell of fresh-cut grass and roasted garlic floated through the evening air. The house had transformed. White linen tablecloths fluttered under soft breeze. Gold ribbons spiraled up the porch rails. Classical string music played from a small rented speaker near the garden path. Guests in cocktail attire gathered in clusters, holding glasses of sparkling cider and Pinot Grigio. I walked in to polite applause. Some of Mom's friends clapped, and someone handed me a flute of champagne. I smiled, nodded, exchanged a few thank yous. But almost immediately, something felt off. The decorations were too elaborate, not college grad, elegant, but romantic. Golden candle holders, clusters of pale roses, silver name tags written in calligraphy. No school colors, no "Congratulations, Emily" banner, no diploma photo anywhere. Then came the moment. Clara descended the staircase slowly, in a deep red satin dress, her arm looped through Mom's. Her hair was curled, lips glossed, expression glowing. I froze, watching as guests turned toward her like flowers to the sun. They reached the bottom of the stairs. Mom smiled like she was about to give a toast. She didn't even glance at me. She raised a hand gently. "Everyone, may I have your attention?" Her voice was light, practiced. "Thank you all for coming. Tonight is about family, about celebrating milestones and love. And I have something truly special to share." My chest tightened. Clara and Daniel are engaged. The room erupted in applause. Champagne glasses raised. Someone even whistled. I stood still. My flute trembled in my hand. I was no longer the guest of honor. I was just a guest. I looked at my father. He gave a tight smile and looked away. My grandparents sat silently by the punch table, eyes narrowed but saying nothing. Clara beamed as Daniel joined her side, slipping his hand around her waist. He looked surprised, but not surprised enough to stop it. I stepped back, felt the edge of the buffet table press into my hip. The scent of basil pasta was suddenly too much. I had saved up for this party. I had transferred the deposit for catering, paid the decorator from my savings, even sent the guest list weeks in advance. And now I was watching it turn into someone else's spotlight. Again. I didn't think. I just moved. I walked toward the front where Mom still stood, cheeks pink, smiling at the crowd. I could hear the echo of forks on plates, the laughter that didn't include me. My heels clicked against the hardwood. I reached the mic on the side table and lifted it gently. It squeaked as I adjusted it. The room quieted. My heart beat like a drum in my ears. My hands shook, but my voice was steady. "Hi, everyone. I know you've heard some exciting news already tonight, and I don't want to take away from that, but I'd like to share something too." Some people turned. Daniel looked up. Clara's smile flickered. This party was planned to celebrate my college graduation. I paid for it. I organized the guest list. I chose the food, the lights, even the music. I took a breath. But somehow, like always, it's not mine anymore. No one moved. I've spent a lot of my life being quiet, giving space, letting moments slip by so others could have theirs, but not tonight. Clara's eyes widened. Daniel took a small step back. "You see, this moment. This was supposed to be mine, and I won't let it vanish. Not again." I lowered the mic. Daniel turned to Clara, whispering something, his brows furrowed. "You told me this was just a dinner," I heard him say, not bothering to keep it private. Clara touched his arm. "I didn't mean to," but he shook his head, eyes on the ground. I stepped away from the mic slowly, carefully. No slamming, no tears. Just the kind of silence that finally had weight. I wasn't supposed to speak tonight, but if I didn't, I knew I'd keep disappearing. and I was tired of watching my own life from the edges. There are moments when your whole life fits into a single sentence. All the silences, the side glances, the shrugged shoulders, they condense into a few trembling words. And sometimes all you can do is say them out loud before they slip away again. I had stood beside too many microphones before and said nothing. In 5th grade, I stepped back to let Clara speak for our science fair project, even though I'd done most of the work. In high school, I helped write a play, but let someone else take the final bow. At home, during birthdays or holidays, I passed the serving dish and smiled while my name faded into background noise. Not tonight. I still held the mic from my short speech, if you could even call it that. The room had not returned to normal. The music was no longer playing. Guests shifted uncomfortably, whispering into their champagne glasses. The golden glow of the fairy lights didn't feel warm anymore. It felt like a spotlight. My mother stood a few feet away, lips pressed together, hands folded tightly in front of her. She was trying to read the room, I could tell, trying to decide if she could still wrest control of it. I looked at her, then back at everyone else. "I want to thank you all for coming tonight," I said, voice slightly steadier now. "Really, I know we all have busy lives, and this meant a lot to me." A few heads nodded. A distant cough. Glasses clinked somewhere behind me. I just thought it was important to be honest. This party was planned to celebrate my graduation. I paid for it with money I saved from work. I chose the music, the food, the table arrangements. I was told we'd keep it small, meaningful. I paused. But this isn't the first time something like this has happened. Clara stepped forward slightly. "Emily," I held up a hand, not sharply, just enough to say, "Let me finish." There were birthdays where the cake had her name instead of mine, family dinners where her school play got an applause and my report card didn't get a mention. I gave up a room, a summer camp, even a spot on the school newspaper because it was easier to avoid conflict. I swallowed hard, but I think somewhere along the way, I also gave up my voice. Diane stepped forward, her smile tight and eyes gleaming too brightly. "Emily, sweetheart, let's not do this here. Let's not ruin the evening." I turned to her slowly. "I'm not ruining anything. I'm telling the truth." Clara's face was flushed now. Daniel stood beside her, his arm no longer around her waist. His expression had shifted from polite confusion to something closer to unease. "Why didn't you just say something earlier?" Clara asked, her voice wavering but still tinged with irritation. "Because when I do," I said softly, "it's called ruining the evening." A few guests looked down. One woman from my dad's office sipped her drink faster. Daniel cleared his throat. "Clara," he said, voice low but clear, "you told me this was just a small family gathering, a casual dinner." Clara blinked. "I didn't think it would matter." "It does," he replied, setting his glass down on the table beside them. "It does matter." And then, without another word, he walked toward the door. The room held its breath. Clara stared at him. "Daniel, don't do this here." But he didn't stop. The door clicked shut behind him. For a moment, I stood frozen, unsure of what to feel. It wasn't triumph. It wasn't vengeance. It was air. For the first time in a long while, I could breathe. Diane moved toward me again, reaching out this time. "Emily, I just wish you had told me you felt like this. You didn't have to make a scene." I looked at her hand, then into her eyes. "Every time I tried to speak, you were already listening for Clara." Behind me, I felt a presence, quiet, steady. Grandma Margaret stepped up beside me, placing her hand gently on my shoulder. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Her touch said what my whole childhood had craved. "I see you." I looked down at the floor for a moment, then back at the guests. "You don't have to cheer for me," I said, louder now. I just wanted to stop cheering for people who never looked back. The quiet in the room was not cold. It was weighty, like a truth that had waited too long to be spoken. And as I stepped away from the mic and walked toward the side of the room, the fairy lights above us flickered again. This time, I noticed they still burned just fine. Silence can be louder than applause, especially when it's filled with truth. The morning after the party, the house was still. Not peaceful, just quiet in a way that felt like something had cracked. The gold ribbons on the porch drooped slightly, wilted from the breeze. Inside, the kitchen smelled like frosting and seafood, an odd mix of celebration and something left too long in the open. Half-empty wine glasses sat untouched on the counter. A tray of cupcakes, their frosting slightly sunken, sat beside a bowl of untouched basil pasta. The lights had been left on in the dining room. I stepped in to grab my overnight bag, which I'd stashed upstairs in the hall closet. I didn't expect anyone to be awake, but Mom was there, standing by the sink, her back to me. She didn't turn around when I walked in. "You could have waited," she said, voice tight. "For what?" I asked. "To have my party quietly hijacked like the rest?" She turned then, eyes puffy, jaw set. "You embarrassed your sister, in front of family, in front of Daniel. I didn't tell her to lie to him, or to you." She didn't respond, just picked up a wine glass and rinsed it with more force than necessary. Dad entered from the hallway, pulling a sweatshirt over his head. He glanced at me, then looked past me like I was just another guest they were waiting to leave. "I just came for my things," I said. Before they could answer, Clara came down the stairs. She wore one of Mom's robes, too long for her arms. Her hair was still perfectly curled. "You didn't have to make a scene," she said, folding her arms. "You didn't have to take my moment," I replied. She scoffed. "I didn't plan for it to go that way." I stared at her. "You showed up in a red satin dress to an event you knew I paid for. You let Mom introduce your engagement in front of people who came for my graduation. You didn't plan it?" She hesitated. "You always make everything about you." I smiled, just barely. "No," I said. "That's what you've always had the freedom to do. And now you hate that. For once, someone didn't let you." She opened her mouth but said nothing. I picked up my bag from under the coat rack. "I didn't humiliate you," I added. "You did that on your own." And I walked out. The sun outside was sharp but soft, a May morning that smelled like grass clippings and lilacs. I texted Grandpa before I started the car. 10 minutes later, I pulled into their driveway. Their home was smaller, older, with creaky floorboards and fading paint on the porch. But the second I walked in, I felt lighter. A kettle was already whistling on the stove, and a crocheted blanket lay folded on the armchair like always. Grandma Margaret gave me a long hug without saying anything. Grandpa Harold nodded, his eyes steady. We sat around the kitchen table while she poured tea into the old ceramic mugs she only used for us. After a while, Grandpa leaned forward. "You all right?" I nodded. "Still shaky," I admitted, "but I don't regret it." "You shouldn't," he said. "We saw you long before you saw yourself." I didn't say anything for a few seconds. The steam from the tea curled up into the light from the kitchen window. "I didn't do it to prove anything," I said quietly. "I just wanted, I don't know, to not disappear." Grandma reached for my hand. "You didn't disappear. You endured, and you didn't let it harden you." I looked up at them both. "I don't want your money. I just wanted to know I mattered." Grandma smiled, the kind of smile that came from a place deeper than the surface. "That's exactly why you deserve it," she said. They told me then, gently, that they had updated their will months ago. The house, the savings, their modest stock portfolio, all of it would come to me. Not out of spite, but because they believed I would carry it forward with grace. I didn't cry. I just nodded. Something in my chest, tight for so long, finally exhaled. Later that evening, I curled up on the living room couch under the crocheted blanket, reading one of Grandma's old books. The quiet was different here. It didn't echo. It held you. My phone buzzed on the side table. A message from a number saved under Daniel. I think you were the only honest person in that room." I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I turned the phone over, letting the message sit, unanswered, for now. I used to think validation was loud, a standing ovation, a spotlight, a name called out across a crowd. Turns out it whispers. It came in the way my coworkers leaned in when I spoke during our Monday meetings, in the way my manager asked if I could mentor the 2 new hires, and in the soft, unspoken respect that slowly filled the space where doubt used to live. Summer in Portland was kind this year. My small apartment stayed cool in the afternoons, even with the windows cracked. The walls were lined with books I'd collected from used sales and street bins. My kitchen table wobbled slightly, but it held my favorite mug just fine. Nothing matched, but everything had been chosen by me. I had recently been promoted to junior team lead at the small marketing firm I joined after college. Nothing glamorous, but steady. I wasn't just executing tasks anymore. I was offering ideas. I had a seat at the table, the kind where people turned toward me when decisions were made, and I wrote. Late at night, after the dishes were done and the city sound softened, I wrote. A few weeks ago, I published an essay online titled The Background Child, just a quiet piece about growing up unseen. I didn't expect much, but somehow it spread, shared between strangers who had their own versions of fading into the wallpaper. I received emails, comments, messages. Some thanked me, some cried, some simply said, "Me too." That meant more than any party ever could. Every Sunday, I went to Grandma and Grandpa's for dinner. They never made it formal, just roasted vegetables, a small pot of stew, maybe a pie if Grandma had the energy. We'd sit on the porch after, passing old photos back and forth. One afternoon, Grandpa pulled out my old notebook, the blue one Grandma gave me when I was 8. "I found this in the attic," he said, flipping through pages. "You had a way with words even then." I smiled, taking it from him. There were drawings on the early pages, clumsy daisies, crooked hearts. But later, the words got stronger. Lines that hinted at someone searching for herself through ink and paper. "I'm more than the contrast to someone else's brightness," Grandpa read aloud. He nodded. "You always were." We didn't talk about Clara, not out of bitterness, just a quiet agreement. She still lived at home, no steady job. From what Grandma heard through a mutual friend, Daniel had moved out of state. No wedding, no announcements, just distance. I didn't feel anything sharp about that, not anymore, just space where anger used to live. One late July evening, I stopped by my old neighborhood. The lavender bushes had been trimmed back. The white fence was freshly painted. The porch light was on, casting its glow over the brick path. I stood at the gate for a while. Then I reached into my bag and pulled out a photo, me in my graduation gown, holding the diploma with both hands, smiling in the sun. I slipped it into the mailbox, and before I turned away, I whispered, not bitter, not loud, just steady. "I'm not angry. I'm just done waiting." I walked back to my car, the gravel crunching softly beneath my shoes. I didn't look back. Not because I was afraid of what I'd see, but because I didn't need to anymore. That was the victory. Not the essay, not the promotion, not even the inheritance I hadn't touched yet. It was peace. I drove back to my apartment with the windows down, letting the summer air brush across my face. The city glowed in the distance, quiet and alive. And as I turned the key to my front door and stepped into the warmth of the life I had chosen, I thought about something Grandma once told me. "You'll find your own light, Em, and it won't need anyone else's switch." She was right. This time, I didn't need the mic. Because I wasn't performing anymore, I was simply living. Sometimes the loudest victories are the quiet ones, the kind where you don't need to raise your voice or be seen by a crowd. Just standing your ground with dignity is enough. What I've learned is this: love doesn't always look like applause. Sometimes it's a hand on your shoulder, a seat saved at the table, or a cup of tea on a quiet Sunday. And when we stop waiting for someone else to tell us we matter, we often find we already do. If this story reminded you of a moment in your own life, being overlooked or finding your voice, I'd love to hear it. Because the truth is, even the quiet ones have something worth saying.